This is the Nebraska Greats, a weekly podcast as a service to the Nebraska Greats Foundation, which serves former collegiate athletes facing medical needs and financial challenges. Your tax-deductible contribution will change the life of a former college sports hero. Please give online at negreats.org. And now, here's your host, Ross Jernstrom.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome to the Nebraska Greats Foundation podcast. I'm Ross Jernstrom, longtime sportscaster in Omaha. I covered the Huskers for 42 years, and one of my favorite players was number 33, Clester Johnson. Clester, welcome to the Nebraska Greats Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ross. I appreciate the introduction.
Well, I'll tell you what, we go way back, almost 30 years, when you were playing football at Bellevue West High School. And you were a quarterback, a really good quarterback, and also you played defense too and linebacker. Tell me about those days. What do you remember?
Well, you really making me jog my memory, Ross, but I do remember Coach Feynman not wanting me to play defense, but there was times where we played against a really good player like Tony Veland, or some of those really good Creighton prep teams, and he needed more speed and strength on the field. So those would be the times where I would get out there and, handle business.
You were very highly recruited. You were the best quarterback, Gatorade High School Player of the Year in Nebraska. Tell me what your recruitment was like.
Well, it's obviously things have changed significantly today. I remember talking to Coach Feynman, who was he was kind of a hands-off guy, but when he knew there was something different about myself and Strickland is when Max M. Finger came to the school. You probably remember that name. Big
recruiting guy, like a Sean Callahan.
Yeah. So he came up to the school and, he heard about these two guys. And I would say from that point forward, things just exploded. And I started to get pretty much letters from every team in the Big Eight, with the exception of Oklahoma, nothing really from Colorado, but everybody else. And then I would get stuff from Indiana. I got stuff from a couple of SEC schools, Tennessee. And then I obviously played other sports. I was getting letters for some track stuff. So, it was pretty much letters, a ton of letters and postcards. And I even got a few telegrams from Coach Osborne. So,
well, tell me how it finally came down to decision time, because Nebraska was kind of in that turning stage. They had struggled. They had lost twice to Colorado. The program was kind of at a turning point. Tell me about how you decided on Nebraska.
I would say, obviously, when you live in the state of Nebraska, you start to know a lot about Coach Osborne and just the program's history from the Vandy era and all of the great players that came from that. So I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I didn't know a lot about Nebraska football. I moved to Nebraska in high school. And so I wasn't raised with that Nebraska, rah-rah, I got to be a Husker. So initially to be honest with you, I wasn't thinking Nebraska football. I was thinking, about a few other schools, and we don't need to bring those up, but the best decision happened because of Coach Feynman, and one of the things he talked about was life after football, and every kid thinks he's going to go pro, and the fact that I lived here, people knew who I was, and if you kept your nose clean, you graduated from college, the potential to have a good career and a life after football would be greater. And he kind of preached that to me, and I would say that's probably what helped me make that decision. And then on top of that, Coach Osborne came to the school, and I saw how everybody reacted. And then we ended up going to Village Inn because he couldn't talk to me. For some reason, he couldn't talk to me at the school. And so my coach had to take me off the grounds to talk to him. And I remember we went to Village Inn, me, Coach Osborne, and Coach Feynman, and Village Inn was packed. And we walk in this place, and you would have thought that these people saw a ghost. The whole restaurant just shut down when they saw Coach Osborne walk in there. So I said to myself, well, this dude must be, this dude is special. And obviously he ended up being a special guy. And I'm glad I made that decision.
Well, you go down to Nebraska and you arrived down there with a load of talent, some great recruiting classes that were there. And you decided to redshirt your first year, and you've got a lot of guys in that receiving corps, very talented. And a lot of guys would bolt after the first couple of years, but you stuck with it. Kind of tell me about that receiving corps. You were at wingback and that transition to wingback, and you stuck it out. Tell me about those early years.
Well, initially what happened is I came to Nebraska as a quarterback, and I was in the same class as Brooke Behringer. So it was myself, Brooke Behringer, and Tony Veland. And what I quickly decided was, I want to have a social life. And when you're a quarterback at Nebraska, you have to study, you have to pay attention, you have to really learn not just your position, but you have to know about everybody on the team pretty much, and on defense. You got to know coverages. You got to know what the linemen are doing. You got to know how to make checks. And me at the time when I came to Nebraska, I was just very immature, not ready for that responsibility. So, I told Coach Osborne I didn't think I was cut out to play that position. And he suggested that I go to defense because George Darlington needed more defensive backs. So went over there, tried that for a spring. Didn't really like that because I feel like I'm an offensive player. I wanted the ball. And then that's how I ended up coming back to play wingback with Coach Brown. Coach Brown said to the coaches, hey, let me take Clester. I think that he would fit well as wingback. And that's what happened. So that first year was tough. But the second year was even tougher because here I'm buried on the depth chart. I don't really know the position that well. There was Abdul Muhammad. There was Vincent Hawkins. There was Brett Pobblewell. There was David Sizes. There was walk-ons. Those guys were walk-ons, some of those guys, and they were very good. And what made me stay, Ross, was I'm just very competitive. I was just very competitive. I wanted to make it work. I wanted my friends and family to see me play at Nebraska. So that's what pushed me to figure out how I'm going to make this work. And, it was just that internal fight.
Well, your sophomore year, you start to see some action, even your freshman year in 92, but you really have that 94 season, you really start to see a lot of action. What was the difference?
So here's the difference. I clearly remember. So Coach Brown, as a staff, they record everything. They record all the practices. They record one-on-ones. That's how they separate who's going to play. They evaluate everything. So Coach Brown one time made an example out of me. He basically was showing me in front of everybody that was on the receiving court how soft I was, how soft I was playing. He basically made an example out of me. And from that point forward, the light bulb came on. I remember we were watching like a team event, and he was like, who is this guy at the top? Like he knew exactly who it was, right? Who is the guy at the top up here not being very aggressive, not blocking, not running hard? And, it was me. So my mentality was I had a lot of friends on defense, and I didn't want to, quote unquote, hit them hard. I didn't want to be aggressive with them. But from that point forward, I said, you know what? It's business. It's not personal. This is strictly business. When I come out here, I'm sorry. If I want to play, I gotta make an example out of you, my friends. So I just let them all know. I said, listen, this is business. It ain't personal. We could be friends outside of practice, but when I'm at practice, I'm gonna let you have it. And it was just a mindset change.
Well, your senior year, you end up, after winning a national championship, you end up being the leading receiver on the team with 22 receptions, 367 yards. But here's the deal, 16 yards a catch. I mean, you were the big play receiver in that offense, and there's probably no bigger play in your career than the Colorado game, your senior year. You're out there in Boulder. It's a tight game, but right before the half, you catch a long touchdown pass and you run in the end zone. Take us back to that crucial day in Boulder in '95.
Well, we thrived on making other people's stadiums our stadium.
Yeah.
And it was almost like an internal amongst us players to, like, I'm not going to wait on you to I'm going to make the play. And I think a lot of us had that mentality. A lot of us were we all wanted the ball, and especially being a receiver in that offense where they even had to make blocking a big deal so we could feel good about ourselves. We knew as receivers that we only threw the ball 15 to 17 times a game. So we knew that when the ball is in the air, if you want to continue to be a part of the offense, if you continue to want to make plays, you have to catch it and you got to do something with it. And that was just my mentality. Every time the ball was in the air, I wanted to make a big play. And on top of the fact that was a rivalry, and there's always a lot of back and forth for the whole week. Like, we would hear stuff that they say, I'm sure we would try to keep quiet. So, we didn't want to have them have any bulletin board material, but they always gave us something to fuel the fire. And when we came to the stadium, we were already ready. Like, we were ready to win the game. And it was just a matter of, when my number was called, what I was going to do. So my senior year, so on top of that, Ross, let me tell you, on top of that, here I have John Vedral, who's a very good player. And I have Riley Washington, who wins the 60-meter sprint in the Big 8. And I'm just like, if I don't perform, there's people behind me that want to take my spot. So I just never, ever wanted to allow Coach Osborne to think that any of these people behind me were better. So, again, whenever I got the ball, I was always thinking about every game we would have a plaque for the player of the game at each position. If I didn't win that plaque, I was mad.
Well, that's cool.
I always wanted to win that plaque. So I'm going to grade out the best. I'm going to make the biggest plays. That was just my mentality.
Well, you were part of one of the greatest offenses in the history of college football, and also one of the greatest teams in the history of college football. When you look at that, I mean, it's been 26 years now. I mean, you look back at that team and how it's measured up, and it's still in the conversation of the top 3 teams in the history of the game. Did you realize at that time how good that team was?
That would be an absolute no. I don't think any of us knew how good we were. I think, we won it the year before, and coming back with the depth that we had, I just think that we were doing our jobs. We were just really trying to, everybody was looking for perfection at their position. And that was the year I think that Coach Osborne had a team that everybody was trying to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Nobody wanted to make mistakes. And equate that to today. When I look back what Coach Osborne did, like in practice, if you jump offside, if you're dropping balls, you have pressure on you to not do those things. I mean, he would make a really big deal out of that stuff in practice. Like, you jumped offside, like it was like he wanted to have a heart attack because you jumped offside, or he wanted to have a heart attack because you missed a block or you dropped a ball. Like, it just didn't look favorable on you if you did those things. So if you're trying to be perfect in practice, when they get in the game, it's easy because obviously I'm not playing against people as good as I am in practice. So I should be playing better.
Clester, we got about 5 minutes left. I want to talk to you post-Nebraska, and you're the father of some very talented football players in your family. Tell me about your sons and where they're playing now and what their future is.
My oldest son graduated already from Wyoming. He had a pretty solid career. Obviously, his last year, he was injured in the bowl game the year before and just decided he didn't. My oldest son probably didn't love football. He was really good at it, but probably his love for it wasn't like the last two. Kay, the middle son, underdog, always had the I'm better than what I'm getting from people. So I think that drove him to be where he is today because he just never felt the love. So he's that pushed him. And Keegan, I would say he would be Kay went to South Dakota State. Now he is trying to see what's going to happen with his career going forward. Keegan is probably the best of the two. Like, he's very competitive, and he also is big, strong, fast, really strong. So I think Keegan has been inspired by Kay because he can see that if you put the work in, you could be, you can get some real great results. So, he's just getting started. He's at Iowa, and I hope that, I hope that he gets everything out of it that he puts into it.
Clester, when you look back at your athletic career from high school to where it is now, watching your sons and a great college career, what are you going to remember the most? What do you treasure the most?
I would say, I think I clearly enjoy watching the kids more than me actually doing the sport. I didn't think that I would, but I do. I do watching. I love watching them and what they have accomplished because it was never planned that way. I never raised them to be like, you got to be these D1 athletes. I just want to make sure they were having fun and that I wasn't trying to live vicariously through them, trying to make them be me, because I saw people doing that and I just thought it was not good. And I didn't want them to have that kind of pressure. Any pressure that they had, they were putting it on themselves. I wanted them to put pressure on themselves to be what they can be. Me personally, when I did sports, I was really doing sports to have fun, and I just so happened to be competitive, and I wanted to win. Yeah. I want to win. So if I do something, I'm trying to win.
When you look at the Nebraska Greats, what does it mean to be a part of that group?
I guess you don't really realize, again, when I got done with football in Nebraska, it took me probably 10 years, 15 years before I looked back and said, man, we were pretty good. And I don't know. I think it's cool. I think that obviously we made history and I'm proud of that. But I don't think that my mentality has never been that makes me more special than anybody else out in the streets. I still think that you should treat people with kindness and respect. And whenever people want to talk about it, you are gracious and you talk to them and just let them know that, hey, I'm just like you.
Well, Clester, thanks so much for joining us. You're one of the Nebraska Greats, and thanks for joining us on this podcast for the Nebraska Greats Foundation. Clester Johnson, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Ross.
This has been Nebraska Greats, a weekly podcast serving the Nebraska Greats Foundation. You can find each episode on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Please give generously to serve Nebraska's former sports heroes in need at negreats.org. And be sure to follow the NE Greats on Facebook and Twitter.